Hello and welcome everybody, I'm Barbarian and this is Crusader Kings 3 and we are here after a very long time. We are here looking towards the future and coming of course from a very distant past, but we are here. What is going on? What is happening? First of all, let me tell you that if you are interested in what this video does, but in a highly condensed and animated form, then go check out the video linked in the description. I think linked here as like a card on the top right in this video or something. I don't know exactly how it works, but check out that video. It links to my second channel and it will explain the circumstances of the Islamic world in our save game as you know it and explain what has been happening, what is going on, and why it all is so damn interesting. Make sure to go to the channel, subscribe to the channel, and then come back here. This video itself, in full, will be explaining what I changed in our save game. We are, as you can see, I mean, this is the Iberian struggle map mode right here. We are on 1.6, and I have done a truly grueling amount of save game editing. I've changed so much. I've changed various mods so that bug fixes from newer versions of vanilla are included, but things that would break things on my end are not included. I ran basically an infinite amount of observer games just to see whether there are any bugs, whether there's anything that I should know, whether any mechanics are hindering, you know, the AI or myself, etc, etc. And then I said, man, I've got enough of CK3 for some time, but now I'm here. That some time is over. And let me tell you, today we'll take a look at everything I changed in the Islamic world, and then tomorrow we are actually back. Elizabeth Vez in Season 2 will take over in the year 999, and we will see this campaign through. I'm very, very excited for that. I hope so are you. With that being said, let's take a quick look at what I have changed, just so that you know what has happened. First of all, obviously, we are on 1.6. Second of all, I am no longer working at all with any workshop-hosted mods, by which I mean that, you know, out of fear that at some point some mods could be incompatible. For example, EPE, so Ethnicities and Portraits Expanded, currently is actually incompatible, but I'm using a slightly older version, and that slightly older version lets me use the Fate of Iberia assets, as well as the normal assets, and my save game. So basically, this campaign is frozen in time. We can now just play this campaign, updates, who cares, mod updates, who cares, any mods screwing up, who cares, it doesn't concern us, we are in a good spot. I really am happy about that. So that is the first thing that I did. Then I took a good look at, you know, what 1.6 changed, and I saw that with the mod setup that I had, our setup when it comes to cultures was completely screwed up. Let me describe it in the following way. When in the year 950 the game says, hey, I would like to split Norse culture into Danish, Swedish and Norwegian, which I did manually here, but when the game said that and wanted to do it, the game then, because our save game was basically so screwed, the game said, I don't know what is Norse culture, and frankly, I don't even know what Norwegian, Swedish or Danish are. Things were so screwed up that basically everything was wrong. When a culture auto-converted to Sicilian, well, via an event, right, it would actually flip to, I want to say it was Boyat, it could have been Naiman, I think it was Naiman. It converted to that culture. Things were royally screwed, and for a while there I was thinking to myself, my god, can I salvage this? I legitimately spent days, I'm not kidding, just in Visual Studio Code to edit this save, to edit the cultures of characters, and it's all saved. It all works. I am so damn happy. Meaning, I edited all that, it's completely compatible with 1.6, it works entirely. You can see the unique cultures that we had as per our old gameplay state, Native Frankish and so on, they all are in, they all work, they are all indeed correctly doing what they're supposed to do. Big fan of that. So that is a huge part of where my editing time basically went, what I did. And then after that was done, I said to myself, hey, why wouldn't we step it up a little bit? Why wouldn't we go and say, you know what, Gasconiera comes from Basque. In Fate of Iberia, the Basque have ritualized friendship. Gasconiera now has ritualized friendship. I edited that in, and then I took the cultures of the Iberian Peninsula, checked what they now had for traditions in vanilla, and edited those in as well. So you can see it right here, Tabletop Warriors, Ritualized Friendship right there, Tabletop Warriors, Malleable Subjects, all of that stuff is in. I am so happy that that worked out. So that is something that I did. Then I went and said to myself, okay, wait a minute. So we are in a position, of course, where, you know, you can now have a faith that has the head of faith from a different faith. Meaning, for example, the Pope can be the head of faith for Insula. Now, in our save game, wasn't the case. Here, it is the case. Let's go. Then, I also said, why not add in Mozarabic and I added in Mozambique, made the Pope, of course, the head of it, and there you go. I even converted a bunch of provinces to it. Maybe too many, maybe too little. I did a bunch of observer games, and I can tell you Mozambique doesn't really fare well in, you know, our world here, of course. It is hostile to the, or it is least evil, I think, to the Mumaladi lords that rule in this area, so they are going to do their best to convert it. I added a couple of characters in that are Mozambique as well, but only on the county level, because, I mean, to be fair, you know, this fella here is a Kutamid. He is very much a person that is a Mumaladi ruler. He wouldn't be Mozambique for nothing, right? But if they were to be inclined to convert, I mean, he won't be because he's zealous, right? But if anybody here said, okay, you know what, everybody here is Mozambique, I'll just convert, that could be pretty fun. Either way, I added it in for flavor to symbolize that this is an area where cultures and where religions clash. And all that is in, of course. Now then, the other topic was, does the Iberian struggle work? And the answer is yes. Yes, it absolutely does. Let's take a quick look at the Iberian struggle, and then we will move on and actually take a look at the Muslim world bit by bit. Iberia, Maghreb, and Eastern Mediterranean. The Iberian struggle, also a huge pain to get going. I mean, obviously there was like an empty province right here, right? That stuff honestly was very easy, but the Iberian struggle a bit of a pain because the Iberian struggle needs some cultures defined, and since my game was culture confused, when I said start the Iberian struggle, what would happen was, for example, Akan is involved in the Iberian struggle, and Finnish is involved in the Iberian struggle, because the game thought that those were the Iberian cultures. After I corrected it, everything works splendidly. So you can see, we are in the opportunity phase. You can see that we are in a position where, you know, we aren't involved ourselves, of course. We are not in Iberia, and our culture is born beyond the Pyrenees, so obviously also not directly involved there, but everybody that has to be involved is involved. You can see right here, you know, Storleonese, we got Andalusians involved, of course. We got the Kingdom of Navarre is actually not ruled by a Navarrese person, but as you can see, all of these people are directly involved. And then we got some interlopers. We got the ruler here that is French and Catholic, so they're just interlopers. Then we got somebody that is uninvolved because King Gege holds these territories himself, and that means that he is not involved in any way because he's just not, you know, his capital is over there. Down here we got some Ibadi folks. I thought this one through, you know, I thought about it quite a bit. I said to myself, should Ibadi be involved? But the Ibadis, and we're going to see this in a second as well when I talk about it, the Ibadis weren't born here. They are not natives. The Ibadi faith was brought by Berber invaders, and with that in mind, I think it is only fair to say they probably shouldn't be in a position where they are involved. They are quite literally interlopers. So instead we have Catholicism, Mozarabism, Muwaladism, and Ashari. Not that there is any Ashari ruler here, but you know, that is who is involved. Then here we got a bunch of counties, or a bunch of cultures, I should say. These are missing a single one. I'm going to edit this in basically as soon as I finish this video, which is Sephardi. Sephardi should be involved here as well. They did it in vanilla. I don't have it here, but I'm going to do that as well. There are various events. I saw that every time I was playing an observer. There are various events that can make a culture Sephardi. And actually, maybe I should even add a Jewish faith here to the involved faiths. But then again, we'll see. Either way, but I will be adding a Sephardi culture filter so that they are also involved in the struggle, and then when they spawn in, they will immediately, at the very least, be interloper, if not also actually involved. Either way, the struggle works. You can see all the requirements are normal. Everything here is happening as it should. You can see that we aren't involved. We're not really doing much. I debated whether we should count our culture as involved, but quite frankly, if you really look at it, literally not involved. Gasconiera, literally not an involved culture, no matter how you look at it. So we skipped that. We did gain ritualized friendship, of course, but that is about it. Right. There is something else that I want to talk about real quick before we actually jump into the Islamic world, and that is that I also went and added in, for example, right here, Barum Brigantium. Then I added in the Roman walls of Lugo. I added in, what is this, the city walls of Toledo. I added in the actual Great Mosque, the Alhambras, of course, you know, the way it is meant to be, and then we have the Rock of Gibraltar also added in. All that stuff works, is in, it's doing its job, the 3D stuff is there, and since I redid the cultures, all of a sudden, you know, they're wearing the right stuff. In the past, they would wear the wrong stuff. You can see that we are also eligible to wear the Iberian clothes. That is something we're doing. Oh, by the way, oh my god. I talked about how our cultures were all messed up, and it's difficult to explain what exactly happened there, but I can tell you one thing right now. We, from now on, will get bishops of the right culture. You know why we kept getting Slovene bishops. And you know why Prince Archbishop Bustrick is here? Because the game thought that Gasconniera was Slovene. That is how much our culture situation was screwed up. Okay, from now on, everybody will actually get the right bishops. So that is very exciting to see. I think... Right, no, actually, the other thing that I wanted to mention, since this is now the correct culture, and the correct culture is assigned, boom. I love this throne room so much. It is actually one of the weirdest things, just to, not to like do this for too long, but when I saw this throne room, I mean, it's been a while, but when El Tyrannos was working on it, there were a lot of people that said, oh, this is too small, this is too small. I love this throne room, because it is the only throne room that really fits the size of just a normal, we hold court here throne room. You know, I've been in various places where the German kings and emperors, I mean, you know, they were kings before they were crowned by the Pope as emperors, where they would hold court, where they, you know, when they traveled around, where they would basically turn in, then set up a throne, be next to a chapel, basically, or even be in a cathedral, and then hold court. And this is what it looks like. It's not huge. This, I mean, obviously, it's not what it looks like, because this is Iberian architecture right here, right? But this gives me the very same feeling. This is your king comes in, says, I just came back from the military campaign, tell me what you got on your soul, and then we debate it, right? This is what this feels like to me. I love this. Works properly now, was bugged before. They also got their community flavor pack stuff going on there. You can see everybody got their stuff. I think the EPE's update to Roman clothes is also actually active here. Oh yeah, look at him. Jesus. Oh my god, you are massive. Jesus, truly. But yeah, I'm very, very excited to see that. I think that's very, very cool. Everything is working well. Okay, and this brings us to actually talking about what I'm here to talk about, which is the Islamic world. What is happening in it? Why is it happening? Why is everything on fire? That's ultimately the question that we have to ask. And when we ask this, we could technically start, and that is where I started with the animated video, with the Caliph and the Ghaznavids, but I want to work my way from west to east. We're going to start by talking about Iberia. That is the closest, you know, to us, of course, and I think that is the closest that is interesting and important to us, in the sense that maybe we will interact with the people in Egypt, in the Holy Land, and in the Levant, because, you know, a crusade may or may not happen, but more importantly, I reckon, we should take a very good look at the question of what is actually happening right in front of our doorstep. And it is quite interesting. Now, obviously, we have to contextualize all of this. When we started playing, the struggle wasn't a thing, but look at it. We have a split. The northern kingdoms took the north. By the way, Asturias will split into Castile and Leon. I think it happens a couple of months, if not a couple of years, after we unpause, and then the northern kingdoms will start splitting, which will be pretty cool, I think. But either way, we have this conflict here, but it is not a conflict that really is entirely zealous or overly zealous. If you remember, our only interactions with Iberia were actually in the past, when we came to the aid in the civil wars of, you know, this kingdom right here. I believe we fought them off. I could be wrong here, but I'm pretty sure we fought whoever was trying to come for it. I can't... It's definitely not any of these folks. But somebody here was trying to come for one of these titles. We lost a massive battle, and then a few years later came back and defended it, right? And this is incredible. It's just something that it doesn't happen often, and it shows that these Christians here, they aren't concerned about throwing out, oh, the Muslims, so scary. No, the Christians have arranged themselves with the reality. Every now and again, they will, you know, chip something off here, but usually they are basically just infighting. And I think that we can contextualize this very, very easily into the actual Iberian struggle. Despite the mechanic not being something that was in while we were playing until now, it is something I think that was very, very visible, the way they fight. The current hostility between the Christians and the Muslims from the Christian side is driven by foreigners. It is driven by people that are not native, that do not play a natural involved role in Iberia. It is driven by Queen Mother Denise, and before her it was... let me find them. There she is, Duchess Ida. It is driven by the Gelonis family before anything else. You can see right here, of course, it now fell to the Carlings, but we are primarily talking about this whole area being under control by the Gelonis dynasty that zealously pushed forward and said, we are doing a crusade. Now, the motivation there always a bit odd, I would say, because the Gelonis family, if you remember, they are witches, or at least used to be witches. Duchess Ida in particular there, and a definitive witch right there, also incestuous with her father. They were the ones pushing against the Muslims. The Iberian Christians aren't actually doing that. The fighting between Christians and Muslims that is between the native people here actually stems from the Muslims, and even then it is a rare side. Malik Yahya, let's take a good look at him. Malik Yahya ibn Muhammad of Batalyavs is in the position where he is currently putting Badajoz, right, is Batalyavs, where he is pushing against Asturias. Let's take a quick look at this. So this is a holy war, which isn't actually possible in the Iberian struggle in the phase that we're currently in. So forgive them. They declared this before the phase began. Don't worry about it too much. And they are going to be losing this war. However, and I think this is something that we need to really, we need to appreciate what happened here. Malik Yahya ibn Muhammad declared a war against Asturias. It is a fairly rare war. It doesn't happen all too often. Maybe we can even gain some insight here if we check the biography, if we check at war leader wars. Oh, nothing, right? Okay, the game, maybe it's just kind of bugged out, I don't know. But when we look at the situation, they don't fight over these lands too often. Yes, the Christians pushed down here, but they didn't pursue the eradication of the Muslims. And the Muslims, yes, they pushed up here, but also they didn't look at the eradication. When he declared the holy war against Asturias, I would, more than anything, I think, classify this war. Let me just check it right here. I would classify this war as a border warfare, right? This is just a normal struggle clash, basically. Why am I classifying it this way? I'm classifying it this way because he declared that war, and he was here basically to claim these locations, maybe even go for Santiago. I mean, why not claim more land, right? But the core idea was, I can, this time around, win a somewhat, involved war against the Asturias. I'm not going to eradicate the Asturias, I'm not going to destroy the Christians or anything like this, but I will be pushing north. What Malik Yahya wasn't expecting, that yet again, the Christians from the outside would be the ones that zealously would fight him. The only reason, the only reason that King Alfonso here can win this fairly local war is the fact that he hired the Holy Order of the Knights Templar. Now, the Knights Templar, interesting. Obviously, they serve all Christians, but you know who founded the Knights Templar? Yeah, that's right. The Knights Templar were founded by none other than the Pope Gregorius himself. The giant. The amazing, amazing fella. Look at this throne room. I love this so much. But he is the one that founded the Knights Templar and then ordered them to defend Iberia. What normally is an uninvolved, Iberian clash. Yes, they go to war. Yes, they fight, but it's not a religious thing. Despite, of course, I'm basically reinterpreting this here into a struggle clash rather than a holy war. What usually isn't that deeply involved on a religious level, all of a sudden is because the outside Christians get involved in the east by virtue of invading and get involved in the west by virtue of sending the Knights Templar to defending. It's an interesting thing, because Malik Yahya, and this much I think we can say for certain when it comes to this save game, he is not a person that is incredibly radical in his beliefs. He is a person that primarily, I think, strives for being independent, for being untouched, and the status quo, quite literally, of course, one of the ending decisions here, the status quo. I think that is basically who Malik Yahya is. This ending would be made for him. Because he is in a position where, yes, he is fighting Asturias, but yes, he's also fighting Al-Andalus, and on top of that, he rules primarily over Mozarabiks. Again, based on the observer games that I've done, I'm pretty convinced that the Mozarabiks here are going to go away as we continue playing, but either way, Malik Yahya is in a position where he simply wants to maintain himself, and all of a sudden things escalate. Things escalate because Asturias calls in the Knights Templar. Things escalate because the east is threatened by the Italians and the French invading. This is very interesting. I think Malik Yahya will play a pivotal role in how we perceive Iberia, because of course he borders Asturias, and Asturias is deeply intertwined with our family. You can see it right here. He is our cousin, the heir to this whole thing. That is Duke Lope right here. I love this hat so much. But yeah, I think Malik Yahya and how he reacts to the radicalization of Christians to the north of him, I think that will play a big role to how we see Iberia and how we interact with it. Because that is, how our family is involved in this struggle to begin with. Malik Yahya, must be said as well, is a very good ruler. Temperate, trusting, just. He's a fortune builder. He's a good fella. What can you say, right? He made a fairly wise decision of trying to take some territories from Asturias, and he was simply overwhelmed by the forces of religious fanatics. How that plays out, we shall see. What I do want to mention is, again, he's not strictly going against the Christians here. His family has declared independence from the Umayyads, I think in the year 870 something. It was something like that anyway when I was looking at it. the way this worked, I think, was that the first Emir here, Emir Abderrahman, he was the one to immediately go and basically try his best. He declared independence. I looked at one of the oldest save games, basically, and he declared independence in like the first 3 or 4 episodes, and he did it successfully. So this struggle that goes against the Christians isn't like a unique thing. The Marwanids, I think, in their entire existence, have always been struggling against the outside, the Umayyads, Asturias, right? And then on the inside, they have sought out, you know, the question of cooperation, maybe compromise. I think these are the things that Malik Yahya here is also pushing for, so quite the interesting character indeed. Now then we have Al-Andalus, and Al-Andalus, I think they are the big losers in this area. It has to be said, they started as the Umayyads, and I know that on 1.6 the Umayyads very likely disintegrate unless you have the game rule ticked. Didn't happen here, of course. We didn't have dissolution factions, none of that took place, but Malik Said ibn Zayn of Al-Andalus nonetheless lost land left and right. He lost it very early on, of course, against the enemies right there. He lost land over there fairly early on as well. And then he lost this land to the invading Christians, and he lost land to the Christians to the north that slowly started chipping away. Malik Said has no friends. It's just that simple. He has no friends anywhere in the world. Everybody wants to see the Umayyads fail, be that the Caliph in Baghdad, who of course is against them, because the Umayyads, you know, they, at least in the past, wanted to be Caliphs themselves, because, you know, they used to be the Caliphs, and then he doesn't have any friends in, you know, Badajoz, Asturias, Navarra, Italy, or in these little taifas here, because these taifas are Ibadi. I will ignore Cabra, because Cabra is ruled by an Umayyad. I will say that yes, the actual power that the Umayyads hold over this region is minimal, or well, that Al-Andalus holds over it, but this is family business. I will look at this as a loose confederation. So, basically, the Umayyads have been attacked from all sides, and whatever they did has always been quite misguided. There was an interesting case, I can't find it right now, but there was a marriage at some point, and maybe it is present here. Let me just... No, I'm not entirely certain when it happened, but there used to be some marriages between the Umayyads and the northern kingdoms here. I believe it was Navarra, where they married into the House of Navarra. I think it's one of the distant parts of the Umayyads that actually did that. That's the Idrisids. The Idrisid is a very important story as well. I do want to point that out. The Idrisids will get a fair share of attention here, I think. But that will come on. You can see the Umayyads, so they are currently marrying into the House of the Idrisids, which is also the House of Ali, which is its own, very own story. But they, at some point, tried to marry into the Northern Kingdoms, and what they got was basically the Northern Kingdoms claiming their land. So yeah, the Umayyads, you know, don't have a terrible ruler. He's just temperate, stubborn, but misguided warrior. He is irritable, and he is one-eyed. And he actually is one of those interesting characters here. He is one-eyed, but look at that. Oh, I love that so much. He just has a wooden eye, or maybe a glass eye. I really like that, instead of the eye patch. Anyway, the point of what I'm trying to make here is that central authority under Al-Andalus has suffered and basically has broken down. I wouldn't be surprised if a dissolution faction would basically just destroy the Umayyads outright. But the Umayyads are nothing. They effectively have fallen from grace. Very, very unlikely, I think, to recover going forward, because ultimately they're looking at a situation where they just are so damn weak. And when that happens, the question is whether the Marwanids, whether the non-Iberian Christians, or whether the Iberian Christians will be the ones to really take advantage of it. The last thing in Iberia that is important to address, and that we as a character, as, you know, a people from up here, know barely anything about, the last thing to address are the Ibadi taifas right here. So these are peasant leaders, but it has to be pointed out, this entire territory became Ibadi only because Emir Numan ibn Layla, the father of 3 of the lords that rule here in the Maghreb, you can see it right there, it is Al Jazir, it is Taher, so the south right there, and then last but not least it is the Amrid Emirate. So this entire area used to be unified under Emir Numan ibn Layla, and he was so powerful, he was such a powerful warlord that he invaded Iberia. He saw the weakness of Al-Andalus and he pushed in. Now these territories by now are independent. These territories, you know, are no longer in the hands of Berbers either. They are Andalusian, but they are Ibadi. The message of the Ibadi, and it is quite a radical message, because the Ibadi believe that you need to act against sin, that you need to act against heresy no matter the cost. And they are now present in Iberia as well. I am very interested in this situation developing because obviously right now the Muslim Iberians are in a very weak spot, but ultimately what divides the Marwanids and the Umayyads is purely political. What divides both of them together from the Christians and from the Ibadi is religion. Whether this will be acted out, whether the Umayyads will fall apart, whether they will tame the Ibadi, those are questions that I would love to see answered. But yeah, for sure, we have definitely just a dissolution of centralized Muwaladi power right here. The Muwaladi are reeling. I think that is something that can be said and that I find very, very interesting because it puts them on the back foot. As much as Badajoz was trying to conquer, as much as the Marwanids were trying to conquer, you can see that that is failing because the Christians got now reinforcements from the outside, whereas the reinforcements the Muslims are getting are literally there to destroy them. Yeah, it's a tough spot that Iberia is in, and I'm very excited to see this develop further because the radicalism introduced by Ibadism stands in direct contrast to the Muwaladi creed of being adaptive. So yeah, quite interesting indeed, I would say. Now, let's talk about the Maghreb. The Maghreb also very, very interesting because, of course, I mean, first and foremost, it is the source of the Ibadi radicalism in Iberia. That entire thing is basically a cultural religion almost, I want to say. You can see it right here. The Butre are essentially the carriers of Ibadism. These tribes, I want to describe them as a tribal confederation. That is the way I see it, right? They don't have a central ruler, but I will view them, you know, for the purposes of realistic political arrangements as a very loose confederation. When they go to war, they plan together. When somebody attacks from the outside, they plan together as well. Of course, that's not a game mechanic, but, you know, realistically speaking, I think that is a fair assumption to make. But the Ibadi aren't the only ones that are interesting. I actually have taken a great interest in the Zaidi faithful, because this one, similar to how, you know, everything over here is basically a cultural religion, we have something that is a family religion. The people here that rule are descendants. You can see it, they are Sayyid. So coursing through the veins of Ali is the blood of the Prophet. And they are in a very special position because they are the only Zaidi on this entire map. Right? And Zaidism is only present in their family. And I mean, I guess this guy, okay? The Mezwarids. But they are the only ones here in this corner of the world that are Zaidi. And if I had paused, by the way, then Sus will immediately be annexed by Ali because Sus just says, yeah, I pledge allegiance, God bless. But don't worry about that too much right now. What is important is that they are incredibly, incredibly isolated. Yes, they are unified as a family in Zaidism, and you can see Zaidism also very much looking towards rebellion. You know, rebellion is virtue, and asking those questions, trying to destroy everybody that isn't virtuous, and you know, that has happened a couple of times in the past, both externally and internally. For example, if I take a look here, you will see that this, again, is a family religion, right? But man, installed by faction demand. You can see there's a long line of inheritance here, don't get me wrong. But there was also a long line of civil wars. It now ended with Caliph Ali III. So let's talk about this. We have a family. They are the only family that follows Zaidi Islam. And now we have a Caliph. The Zaidi Caliph. I edited this in just for the record. I made him Caliph to make it more interesting, to bring some more dynamics. I also actually edited the holy sites here. The Zaidi holy sites that are normally in Egypt, I think, are now over here just for purposes of usability. And the Almohadi are over here, but we'll get to that in a second as well. And then I made Ali III the Caliph. Why did I do that? I did that because I think after he came in power, which I think is 10 years ago now, he ousted Prince Lukman. Then he came into power. It's 20 years, actually, damn. No, actually, it's 10 years. I can't see. It's like 12 years. He gained power, and since then has ruled in a stable arrangement. Look at how quickly all these other folks were just disputed, right? How easy it was for them to throw out their enemies. This fella here was killed during a goddamn siege, right? And then Ali comes along, and he is the first truly stable ruler in a long time. I said to myself, where would this stability come from? I think that canonically we can say that the Ali family, that the Idrisid family sat down and arrived at the conclusion that if they want to play a big role in Iberia and in the Maghreb, they need a stable and strong leader. And Caliph Ali III, well, at least he seems to be the leader. I say seems to because who knows. I'm very excited to see this development go further, whether Caliph Ali can keep it together, because again, it is a very plotting family. Let's just say it in a fairly euphemistic style, right? But it is a family that plots against each other, against itself, and Caliph Ali may yet fall. But if he doesn't fall, he may push into the Ibadi faithful, he may push towards Iberia. I am very, very excited exactly what they will be doing there. You see it right here, right? He is married to an Umayyad, which could give him legitimacy, but she's a distant Umayyad. She's not giving an alliance to Malik Said. This could still escalate rapidly. Whether Caliph Ali will push any claims, whether he will push anything, we shall see, but I'm very, very happy to say that I like the dynamic of the Zaidi here being incredibly concentrated on moving outwards for the very first time in this entire game. Before that, they have basically exclusively tried to overthrow one another. Let's take a look at whether they have any interesting artifacts. They have the Holy Banner of Muhammad. Look at that. There it is. I love this. I want to see whether the Idrisids are going to throw some fists. It should be quite interesting, I think. The Umayyads don't actually have anything that is religiously, rather important. It's all fairly mild that they have there. What about you? You got 0. I mean, okay, wait a minute. I think they just became kings, right? In 991, yeah, just 8 years ago. Fair enough, I guess. Fair enough. Right, that is the Zaidi families here. Then we got the Ibadi. And the Ibadi we sort of touched upon already in the past, but the Ibadi are very, very interesting to me because despite being as decentralized as they are, first of all, the father of the current rulers of Al Jazir, as I said, Amrid and Tahert, he was able to invade Iberia, to spread Ibadism into it without any problem. If these brothers, and you can see some of them are already allied, but if these brothers were to get it together, become a true confederation, if, for example, Emir Jafar here were to ask his brothers to invade Iberia again, Ibadism could grow even stronger. And I also think that the alliances that we have between the brothers here could be a thorn in the side of the Ali Caliph. If Caliph Ali were to decide to go for Ibadism or to go into their direction and conquer them, he might get a bloody nose. Maybe even more than that. But what fascinates me even more about Ibadism, and I say this from the perspective of basically, a position where I have seen so many observer games, where I've seen how things might develop, how things might go. So I already basically have a hunch, but whether it will actually happen, obviously it's very, there's a lot of RNG involved. But what fascinates me so much about Ibadism is that what I saw regularly in the observer games was one of the Ibadi tribals, well, they're not tribals technically, oh no, he is tribal actually. I saw very, very often Emir Bukus II Ibn Yabit of the Riga, of the Bani Riga right here. I saw him declare war against the Firhun Grand Emirate, which is the governor in the name of the Caliph, of the Ashari Caliph over in Baghdad. I saw him invade the Firhun dynasty and destroy them. And I am so fascinated by this. Every time I saw this in the observer game, I said to myself, that's incredible, because obviously the Firhun dynasty fundamentally is superior. But he has so much piety. If he makes enough allies, and you can see he has a couple of allies, if he makes enough allies, if he pushes into the Firhun Grand Emirate, we may see an Ibadi North Africa that could then indeed be a threat to anybody, despite not being centrally organized. I'm very fascinated by this, because while loose confederations aren't a mechanic in the game, politically speaking, like what is happening here roleplay-wise, I think they fit in perfectly. They would be ousting their religious enemies because they see them as sinners. I talked about this before. The Ibadi in this game have been very aggressive. They have been very literal. They don't need a leader. There is no caliph. There is no grand emir of, the Maghreb, but they have a common goal, and that is ousting the enemies of the faith, the enemy of the faithful. And in this case, this means the Ashari governor of Tunisia. Amir al-Umara Itij ibn Firhun also is a pretty good target. So whether this happens or not, I don't know, but I just want to bring this up because if we see it, it shouldn't be a surprise. It doesn't come out of nowhere. The Ibadi have struggled against the Firhun dynasty for quite some time, and right now would be a pretty good time to do it. Let's take a look at this, right? This is the most fascinating case that I've personally seen. This is Tunisia. Tunisia in 944. Was held by Archon Basiliu I. He conquered it in a holy war and held it for 20 goddamn years. For 20 years. Until Amir al-Umara Firhun ibn Jafar actually reclaimed it. I love this so much. There are two stories in here, and both of them are equally as important. First of all, the Sardinian house, right? That currently rules over Sardinia. They're Orthodox, and he is a holy warrior. That Sardinian house founded itself in Tunisia. It founded itself in Tunis. That is why it's called Tokidori or Tunisi. Because they genuinely claim that they should own Tunisia and that they should regain it. He still has a claim on it, just for the record. And Archon Basilio II, if the Fionn dynasty were weak enough, surely would try to press this claim. I seriously love this situation here. We have a weak Fionn dynasty that stands against very decentralized Ibadi realms, but some of the Ibadi realms have a lot of piety and could potentially get the ball rolling. And then we have Sardinia in the north that literally founded themselves in that location and want to reclaim it. You can see it right here, victory over hope. They basically try to do the impossible. They try to push for victory no matter what, no matter how hopeless it seems. I really love this story here, because when Tunis, or should Tunis fall, that would mean that the economy of the Muslim world would break down. It already has, basically. As soon as Sicily falls, there's a difficulty here with the grain supply. Historically, it happened when Sicily was taken by the Normans. The grain supply of Tunisia was badly endangered. They simply weren't in a position of supplying themselves. Then the Berbers conquered Tunisia, and Tunisia basically had a setback when it comes to its wealth and prosperity for several centuries. It was a very difficult time. And this is what we have here seen already when the Eastern Romans fairly early on claimed Sicily. But this would be further enhanced should the port cities actually fall to either the Ibadi Berbers or to the Sardinians. I want to see this play out. Now, the other side of this story is that the current house, so these are, just for the record, this is the Isli dynasty, but the current house ruling this territory, who founded it? That's right. It was, of course, Amir al-Umara Firhun ibn Jafar. That's why they're called Firhun. And he is the fella that retook Tunisia. He conquered Tunisia. Isn't that cute? He held this emirate as well. Did the emirate actually? Let me check this. No, they always held the emirate. He retook Tunisia and said, I proclaim that my house is now more important than the dynasty that came before. We are the true rulers of these lands because we reclaimed it. Our ancestors lost it and now we are back. So, in a similar fashion to Sardinia, where Sardinia founded themselves in Tunis and said, this is our new land, the Tunisians say Tunis must be held by us because that is what our ancestor Firhun did. Well, our father, I should say. But I hope you know where I'm coming from here. This is an explosive situation. The Ibadis could just do nothing, basically, right? But they are in a position where they could endanger the Firhuns. The Firhuns are in a position where they are endangered by the Ibadi and Sardinia. Where this is going, I can't say. But I absolutely love that this has the dynamic that it does. There are some really powerful Berber tribal lords. You can see them right here. This fella here is actually allied to the Hafsids. We're going to get to the Hafsids in a second. But yeah, we got, of course, Mzab, which is our beloved Emir Bukus, who I have seen several times invade the Firhuns. It might be successful, it might not be successful, but I do think there is a significant amount of risk here from the Ibadi Muslims. So the Maghreb, I think, currently a fairly quiet place in comparison to, for example, Iberia, in comparison to the Eastern Mediterranean, but the Maghreb, a territory that could be explosive. If Caliph Ali attacks Iberia, if he attacks the Ibadi, that could be disastrous for either side. If the Ibadi get together and invade Iberia, or, you know, for example, Tunisia, that could be disastrous, and then we got Sardinia as a pure wildcard. I love this setup. The Muslims are so damn interesting in this playthrough, seriously. Just absolutely stunningly interesting. But this is all about the Ibadi, and I should say about the Maghreb area here when it comes to the discussion of Islam in our world. And we shall be moving on to the Eastern Mediterranean here, because those are... Man, and I gotta tell you, I'm excited for Iberia, I'm excited for the Maghreb, but the Eastern Mediterranean is crazy. The Eastern Mediterranean is truly and genuinely wild. Let's take a look at why they're wild. Now, the obvious thing, obviously, is the Hafsid Emirate still exists. The Berber pirates, I created a custom culture, if you remember, Ikritis, they are still in control, they can raid, they are practiced pirate, they have maintained themselves. They are divergent culture here that is now in Crete, that is present there. It's basically comparable, I think, to Sicilian. They can exist there. I don't think they really went against the Greek, it's just I diverged it rather than hybridizing because, you know, it makes it easier. the way I did it back when we started the campaign, but they are in a pretty good position. They still have Orthodox folks living here. They have done nothing against it, yes? Half of the island is now Muvaladi, and I think that is actually not even where their capital is. Let me take a look at this. Yeah, Kandak, if I'm not mistaken, Kandak was actually founded, historically speaking, by the Emirate as a bit of a more inland, castle defense. Well, not a castle, but fortification, that's the word. As a more inland fortification in defense against the Byzantines, and I mean, they did exactly that here, and then they just survived. Look at it. Yeah, they're, installed by faction demand, sure, but my god. The Hafsid Emirate. They made it all this way. They still exist, they have terrorized the Byzantines, and they are incredibly, incredibly deserving, I think, of everybody's praise. They are allied to the Ibadi there, they have communicated with them. Clearly, the Ibadi believe that there are bigger threats around, and the Hafsids believe that as well. Now, what comes next is a bit of a headcanon thing, but I mean, you have to do headcanon in these sort of games, but it's something that is very important to me. I think that right now, the Byzantines and the Hafsid Emirate have a bit of a truce. And I think this truce is very important and incredibly unconventional. Now, fundamentally, the Hafsid economy, without a doubt, exists or is based on the idea that they will be raiding the Aegean Sea. If they raid the ports of the Aegean Sea, they will be raiding the very heartlands, well, the heart seas, I guess, of the Byzantine Empire. That is what they did historically, and that is why, historically, the Eastern Roman Empire did everything that was in their power to destroy the Emirate of Crete. And eventually they did it. In this timeline, they didn't do it. But the Hafsid Emirate realizes that there are some threats to its existence that go further than even the Eastern Roman Empire. And in this case, I think that threat is both scaring the Romans and the Emirate. I think that this has moved them towards actually a truce, and canonically, in my headcanon, the Hafsid Emirate currently isn't raiding. I think the Hafsid Emirate currently, and we actually have some very light evidence. I mean, it's just me spinning a story, but there is some evidence, I think, that we can argue that rather than raiding, the Hafsid Emirate currently is patrolling the Aegean Sea to guarantee that, everything in the Eastern Roman Empire is in order and that everything works properly, that everybody can live, and, that nobody will be destroyed because, and I can't actually, wait, I can find it if I look at my, there he is. They have the followers from Kandak, which is a mercenary company, and this mercenary company basically is directly founded by the Hafsid Emirate. So instead of being pirates, they're now mercenaries. That is the way I would see this. And I really like this idea. Because there is a bigger threat. There is something to look at that is worse than being raided by the Emirate or being threatened by the Eastern Roman Empire. I mean, yeah, okay, the Hafsids have been threatened the entire time, but they've never been conquered. But there's something worse, something considerably worse. It is Mahdi Yusuf, the Impaler of the Almohadi Caliphate. This is the most interesting part, in my opinion, in this entire goddamn Muslim world. And it's so damn cool. I love this to pieces. So, what do we have here? Mahdi Yusuf, the Impaler. I made him Mahdi, just for the record. I mean, fair enough, right? He would have been the leader of the Almohadi anyways, but I made him Mahdi because I moved the holy sites of Almohadi. I moved it to Egypt so that he could potentially, found this role himself. But when I did Observer Games, it seemed like the Muslim leaders never found their caliph roles, right? So I did it manually for him. Don't worry about it too much. Egypt is the most interesting country on the map. More interesting than Aquitaine. And let me tell you why. Installed by goddamn faction demands. Egypt is the single least stable country to ever exist. And it is as unstable, or it was as unstable, because way back, look at this, way back, right here, this is the first sultan that was Almohadi in the year 907, almost 100 years ago. And from 907 to 908, civil war. Another civil war to bring in Almohadi into power. 919, a different Almohadi. 924, a different Almohadi. Almohadi. Ashari is back. Ashari. Almohadi. And now we're here with Mahdi Yusuf. Egypt and the family of the Tulanids has been completely wrecked by the havoc of civil war, by the havoc of, basically being in a position where you're either loyal to the Caliph in Baghdad or you're not loyal to the Caliph in Baghdad. In the end, the Almohadi faction clearly has won out. One of the last people that still is not Almohadi is Sheikh Mohammed right here, and when he rules down there in El Dakla, come on, and he is Ashari, sure, but other than these small folks down here, and I mean, these are actually independent when you look at that. Only this is actually part of Egypt, but everything else, Almohadi. This civil war, after 100 years of infighting, is now decided. And it gives us Mahdi Yusuf. And Mahdi Yusuf is in a natural war. I was not involved with this at all. He was actually in this war before we had the big break of the Let's Play. But he is in a war against the Eastern Roman Empire for Northern Cyprus. It's kind of hard. I kind of want to give him whole Cyprus if he were to win. It's going to be difficult, as you can see. He has fewer troops, but I have seen him win several times in observer mode, but it's a toss-up. It depends on how the AI decides to move its troops, right? You know how warfare works in CK3. Anyway, Mahdi Yusuf the Impaler. After 100 years of strife, after the economic devastation that Egypt went in that strife, has now stabilized the realm, has declared himself the Mahdi, and is invading the Eastern Roman Empire to show that the Almohadi faithful can do what the Ash'ari faithful cannot. I love Egypt. Egypt is what makes me say, if there was a crusade, and if we were to win it, which is unlikely because crusade AI, you know how it is, if we were to win it, I would want to be a count or a duke in the Kingdom of Jerusalem. I would actually take that. Usually I would never do it, but with the Almohadi faithful being as cool and as interesting as they are, I would absolutely do it. This is one of the most interesting cases. I hope they don't fall apart. I hope the 100 years of strife are over. But my god, what a story. Completely unbeknownst to us. I seriously love this. And in the context of Egypt, finally, getting up and trying to fight external enemies rather than itself, I would argue that the Hafsid Emirate and the Romans have made a deal. Peace for now. We will get on each other's throats later. For the moment, Vasilevs Nikolaos is himself. I don't think he's there right now, but as soon as we unpause, he is himself commanding an army there, and he is having a tough time. Where exactly this goes, I can't tell you. But I love this. The Eastern Mediterranean area is in a deep crisis, and I'm excited to see how it develops. Yes, Iberia is a hot topic, but we're going to see this develop in front of our very eyes. We're going to be involved. The Maghreb could be a hot topic. Right now, fairly quiet. Of course, there's these nice stories of the Furhun and the Sardinians, but who knows where that goes. The Eastern Mediterranean, pure chaos. And for this, I do want to say I would love it if trade played any role in CK3. I mean, again, it played a role in CK2, but it didn't do what it would have needed to do anyway. The Egyptian crisis, to put this into a roleplay explanation mode, I think the Egyptian crisis was kicked off in our scenario here when the Eastern Roman Empire conquered Sicily in whole from the Aghlabites. Let me take a look at this. When did they take it? Oh my god. No goddamn way. Look at this. Okay, so the Muslims lose Sicily in 912, right? 912. Let's keep this in mind. The first Almohadi rebellion, 911. So as soon as trouble in Sicily was brewing, as soon as the trade routes that came from Andalusia, that came from, for example, Amalfi, who was historically speaking very involved with, trading with the Sicilian Muslims. The trade that came from Tunisia, and the trade, of course, that goes from Egypt towards those areas, as soon as trouble brews and Sicily falls into Orthodox hands and the empire says no more Muslim trade ships in our seas, as soon as that happens, Egypt goes into the civil war. Now, mechanically, completely unrelated. That Sicily happened to be taken by Orthodox folks at the same time as the Almohadi faith did their first rebellion in Egypt, but let's just connect it beyond mechanics. In my head canon, without a doubt, the Almohadi faithful in Egypt began rising up because their wealth dropped significantly when their trade base was completely eradicated. And from there it escalated over 100 years, and now they're back. They're trying to conquer Cyprus. Maybe they're going to conquer Crete afterwards because they need to secure trade yet again. If the Byzantine Empire can just say don't trade with them, they will forever be poor. If they hold Crete, if they hold Cyprus, if they hold Sicily, Egypt will prosper and the Almohadi faithful will prosper as well. That is, in my opinion, one of the best stories that this game and this safe game has told. Man, what a long explanation, but I just love the Almohadi struggle in Egypt. It is so intense. So these are the major parts of the Muslim world here in the west. There is something to be said about the east, of course, as well. The Ghaznavids are spawned in. Let's not talk about the Samanids. They're Maturidi. It's not that interesting to us just because they are as far away as they are. But the Ghaznavids are in a position where, I mean, yep, he still lives. Sabuktigin may die at some soon point, and then Prince Ismail Sabuktiginoglu of the Ghaznavids will take over. Whether he can maintain this realm is questionable, and it may even see the resurgence of the Abbasids. Right now, the Ashari faithful, I mean, hey, Iberia, no Ashari. The Maghreb, literally only the Furhun dynasty. Right here, no Ashari either. Only here are the Ashari still in power and remain in power. Whether that, you know, can be rolled back, whether the future caliphs, whether the Abbasid caliphs can turn the tide is a question that I can't answer. I think it's fairly unlikely, but it all depends, quite frankly, on where the Ghaznavid Empire goes. This is a great Turkic invader, but his realm isn't stable. The people that serve him do not love him, they simply fear him. As soon as he dies, who knows what happens to his son. This area, I don't have too much to say about it outside of the Caliph clearly losing his grip over Mesopotamia, over all of these areas, but he might be able to bounce back from it. He might not be able to bounce back from it. We have some petty lords over here as well. I don't think that the Byzantines want to take them right now. I don't think, well, they're busy, of course. I don't think the Ghaznavids want to take them. This is a welcome buffer for both sides, at least the way it seems. This is the last breath of the Ashari, and should they lose here, should the Ghaznavids just disintegrate and the Abbasids can't reclaim it, the Ashari faith is basically done. Should the Ghaznavids rejoin the Abbasids, we have another contender for genuine rule over the Muslims. But right now, Caliph Muhammad VI, Ibn Muhammad, I think his time as the Caliph of the Muslims is very questionable. You know, the House of Wisdom, no longer in their control. They don't even rule from Baghdad, they rule from Al-Kufa. Well, technically, on a non-mechanical, on a roleplay level, I will definitely argue that he still rules from Baghdad, but it's just a token rule. The Ghaznavids are in control, they are in the driver's seat. Where that goes, I don't know. But I am so damn excited to see the development of the Muslim world in the future. As I said, tomorrow, we will jump into this and actually play again. We're back. There will be another animated video about the Orthodox Church and about the heathens, but that is a question that I think, like, you know, I don't have to do that before we start playing again. I think we're playing so slow every episode, if you remember, that I think it's fine if I do that a bit later. So that will be coming, but don't worry about that too much for now. Just know tomorrow we are back as Elizabeth Veyes of Basque, daughter of Prince Veya the Impaler. I will see you then. Let me know what you think. Make sure to watch the animated video. And yeah, I'll see you later, alligator.